Planning is an element that often fails in organizations. We typically see that from the process perspective, but also the perspective of skills in planning, skills in doing scenarios, skills in doing understanding of technology and how we can use that technology better. It's a very more prominent skill set that is needed in recent times because we have such unstable supply chains.
Here to Inspire the World channel, we are having Grant from ASCM today. How are you, Grant?
Very good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nice meeting you. It's very long trip, huh? 9 hours?
About 9 hours, yes.
Okay.
Could be worse.
Okay. So now with the movement we are having in KSA, we are having a lot of project, Neom, Red Sea, Diriyah, and we need just to check how is the lever or the contribution to the Vision 2030.
Yeah, I mean it's a great point, and you can actually see that progression in the country. I mean, I think the first time I came here was about 6 years ago, and you can actually see the difference, which is quite incredible. Some of the levers or some of the aspects of Vision 2030 are very much related to supply chain management, very much related to logistics, and positioning the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a supply chain hub, a supply chain leader for the rest of the world, taking the country up the rankings of the best supply chain countries in the world. So from that perspective, I think supply chain has a key role to play. And even in elements, when we look at Vision 2030, you see other parts of the strategy, but everything has a supply chain behind it.
Yes.
So even if it's sports or if it's sustainability or any of the other segments that make part of the vision, we all have to be involved in supply chain in some point. So I definitely see it playing a huge role.
Yes, you mentioned
currently
very
and going
great
forward.
example with the sport because we are accommodating the 2030 World Cup. I mean 2034 World Cup and also the Expo 2030. So yes, we are talking about the project, but at the end, it goes with the supply chain. I totally agree with you. Now, from the skills point of view, you are having a very great view with all world, with all countries, but from gaps of point of view in relation to the skills of the people, you identify some gaps. So what is the most gaps?
It's a very good point, and I think if we look at this question applied worldwide, there's actually a lot of similarities to other countries that we've done projects in and had much connection with. Planning is an element that often fails in organizations. We typically see that from the process perspective, but also the perspective of skills in planning, skills in doing scenarios, skills in doing understanding of technology and how we can use that technology better. It's a very more prominent skill set that is needed in recent times because we have such unstable supply chains, a lot of issues around the world that are happening. So
A
we're
lot
going
of
to need to be.
We have to live with the world that always up and downs,
Exactly.
with maximum or with volatile. So this is what we have to face.
Exactly, and we need the right skills to deal with that.
Mm.
So I would almost say there's an element of base skills also needed. So we cannot ever forget the operational side of things. And when we look at local content requirements in Saudi Arabia, for example, we also need to make sure that we have the right skill set internally to be able to satisfy the jobs that are required of us. So I think it goes across the whole range. We have some of those sort of more fundamental skills or foundational skills that are needed, but also the ability to anticipate, to understand, and to use technology in a different way as we progress through, the changes that are happening.
Okay, but this is the skills. But how to determine and measure your progress?
Yeah, so I would say that there's a starting point in terms of how to decide what skills we need in our supply chains. And that starting point actually comes from the requirement of the supply chain. So when we consider the metric of the supply chain, what metrics are we trying to influence or improve? Is it inventory days of supply? Is it cost metrics? Are we looking at order fulfillment to customers and things like that? If we can be a bit better at pinpointing that, we can translate that into a set of skills that we need in order for us to support that function. So when we look at the skill, let's say it's in order, a functional area of order or a process area of order. If that's where we need capacity and need to improve our metrics, then how do we upskill ourselves in that area? And there's many ways an organization can do that. They can hire someone from the outside who already has that skill. They can use on-the-job training, so giving people the experience that they need to eventually understand that topic, or we could do it through training. So there's various ways in which we can start that process. And then I would almost want to also look at the outcome. So once that initiative has been put in place, once we've done the training, how do we measure the success of that training?
Yes.
And we know the concept of ROI, right? Return on investment. Companies are spending a lot of money on doing training engagements, hiring a trainer, doing certifications and things like that. But we also have a concept called ROE, return on education.
Oh.
And how we see that come out is once we've done the training engagement, what interventions do the people do, or what do they do differently in the organization to actually impact the metric? So it's really a bit of it is understanding what we want to get out of the training, instead of it just being a linear kind of one-dimensional view of we just need to be trained. Let's understand the outcome, the deliverable, set the baseline, and then understand what the target really is for that metric, and ultimately remeasure it once we've had the opportunity to implement what we've learned. That's a powerful thing to do versus just the training.
But it's still intangible. It's very difficult to touch it, because you will train, you will spend, for example, 1 million at the end of this year, then the coming year another 1 million, the third year 1 million. There is no benefit tangible I can touch. So how we can describe that to the organization?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because this is something that we often get as ASCM. We're selling certifications to organizations. So we would definitely know that question comes up a lot. There's a delay, just like a return on investment, right? We're going to spend the money up front. We're going to invest in the people. We're going to invest in the skills that we need. How we do that is we make sure that we have an understanding of what we are trying to impact. Because I would argue that an improved metric is tangible. We can see the improvement in perfect order fulfillment. We can see the improvement in having less inventory that we're not holding. And ultimately, that leads to a lower cost. So that impact is visible somewhere. We just need to make sure we understand the impact of the training and how to isolate it to the right places to assess the true impact of that training or of that skill upliftment.
Can I have an example?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's look at it from a sort of maybe semi outside the supply chain industry. Let's say we look at two different regions, right? One, region A, they all take a certification in planning, right? Let's say it's a planning function. And in the same company, region B, let's say region B is Europe, region A is the Middle East.
Okay.
We then need to analyze and see, did we actually improve the performance of region A after that training versus region B that did not do the training? That's a way to start to isolate that and assess the impact of it. But we need to have the process in place to do the impact assessment. And I think that's more my point, is making sure that that's in place instead of just doing the training in isolation and hoping that it will deliver some kind of value.
So how we make sure that it is successful, in summary?
Great question as well. And I think you're alluding to the fact that a training engagement cannot just be only a training engagement. It's part of a bigger plan. It's part of, for example, let's say we're an organization on a supply chain excellence journey. One of the streams of that supply chain excellence journey can be the skill upliftment of the people, so that the people can better perform in the new processes, the tasks, the technologies that they use. So I would definitely say it's part of a bigger picture, and also encourage anyone who's going on a sort of more bigger mass training engagement is to ensure that the people have a job to do afterwards, that they have a project or they have an intervention or initiative, even something that they can bring up which actually implements and uses the skills that they now have.
Okay. Now, this is the question came from my friend to you. So, how the ASCM can support the organization?
Well, from a training perspective, we have lots of options. So we actually do have an assessment that we do, which is a talent assessment. And how that assessment works is we take it from the perspective of a supply chain process. So if you are somebody in the organization that works in planning, you answer the planning questions. If there's someone who works in transform, manufacturing, or fulfillment, they answer those set of questions. And once we've done that, we can see the maturity level of the organization for those different process areas from the viewpoint of skill.
Mm.
So what skills or expertise, we call them, are needed and are lacking in the organization.
Okay.
That is a good starting point then to translate that into a training plan or certifications we should do or certificates that we can do to support the gap closure of those skills that are not in place.
So, and after the certification, what we have to do?
Well, there's many options in terms of, and I want to bring up maybe one of the elements that ASCM can provide is we're really well known for our models, frameworks, and tools. And the one framework that I'd like to consider here is the SCORE framework, because imagine you now know the skill, you have the ability to understand what level of maturity we're at, where we want to go and where we want to be, but now you need a reference point. What do we reference when we say we should implement best practices? Now we know we need to implement best practice. We know we should assist the process because it's not doing well, but how?
Yes.
So something like the SCORE framework is very valuable because it's not a silver bullet, but it's almost like a library for supply chain people.
Mm.
We can go to the library, we can take the books we need, we can understand how things fit together and build a plan or rebuild a supply chain from scratch. Almost like it's like Lego, right? You now have the supply chain that is there,
Okay.
and we're going to start changing the Lego around so that we can make it better, make it more functional.
Great example. What is the type of framework do you have? I believe you have many kind of certification. Also, you have something related to the scores and assessment maturity. I need to hear about that more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have numerous assessments, which are essentially tools that organizations can use. Many of those tools are based upon the SCORE model, and I'll get to the certifications in a moment too. But the SCORE model, for example, we have a tool or a benchmark that uses SCORE metrics to assess organizations' performance of those metrics to other similar supply chains. So, for example, if we're an organization, let's say we're an FMCG organization based in Middle East, and we have a certain scope, we could look for similar organizations that are also FMCGs, mostly, hopefully, based in the Middle East as well. Maybe a few others from other places in the world.
Look like benchmark.
100% a benchmark, and understand. Let's say it's perfect order fulfillment as the metric.
Mm.
How do we compare to our population group, and how far are we off from that? So the value of something like that is that we now have a basis for which we can do root cause analysis quantitatively. We can define exactly what the reason is for the gap in performance.
It's look like gap identification.
Exactly, but highly quantified based on data that is actual data from companies that's built into the framework. So it's a very useful tool to have, and many of our corporate members actually take advantage of that. The other ones are, so another really useful tool I'd say is a SCORE maturity assessment.
SCORE maturity assessment.
Exactly,
And the
yep.
first one, what was the name?
SCORE benchmark.
SCORE
mark.
benchmark.
We call it SCORE mark benchmark.
Okay.
Which is a very useful tool.
And the SCORE maturity assessment is second tool also.
Correct.
Okay.
And the SCORE maturity assessment is a bit more qualitative in nature, but it's a very good way for organizations to decide together in a group of people, when we read this statement, which one best fits our organization. And what we do with that assessment is we will take the results of it, which is actually what we call level 2 SCORE processes, and we aggregate the results and then determine on what level of maturity are we sitting. Are we a reactive supply chain? Are we a reactive efficient supply chain? Are we integrated, or are we all the way at orchestrated? So there's levels of maturity in our supply chains. And this is something we really want to know, because we see that organizations typically go through a journey, and we see a direct correlation between the maturity of the supply chain and the performance that it delivers from a cost perspective, from a customer reliability perspective, and many other metrics as well. We know that exists for a fact. So we want to help organizations go on that journey of maturity, and understanding where we are right now is very useful through that kind of assessment. So we have many assessments. Those are just to name two of them, but there are others that exist as well. And as I had mentioned earlier, the talent assessment too, that can help us from a skill talent perspective.
Okay, so I believe the maturity assessment is more related to qualitative, but what about the previous one you explained, which is the benchmark? The benchmark is more to number,
Yes,
to quantitative, huh?
exactly. It's a give to get model. So let's say we understand our cost as an organization, total supply chain management cost. Within that, that's a level 1 metric. Within that, we have level 2 and level 3. So what makes up that cost? Now we can compare that cost to other organizations, but we need to give our number in, which becomes part of the database. It becomes anonymous. So other organizations know that it's a retailer and it's based in Saudi, and generally some of the stats around the company, but we never reveal the name of the company.
Okay. Also, there are a lot of organizations doing similar assessments. So, what is something distinguish you from the other?
Well, I'll take it up a step and say the score model is the basis for many of the assessments. But if we just look at the score model in isolation, the value of a model like that is it connects these pieces together. So
Like the Lego, the great example you made.
yes, and it connects. So let's look at performance. If we want to achieve a certain level of inventory days of supply, which processes help us do that? What practices do we need to implement in the process? And what skills are required for that specific metric? So it goes down to that level when we can start to create tie-ins within the supply chain and where value is created and where not. And the assessments are tools to help us to understand the current state, also potentially the future state once we've completed it. So we've done the initiative, we've implemented something new. Let's now do another score mark benchmark in a year or a year and a half and see how the numbers have changed.
Okay.
It's a very powerful tool to have.
Okay, great. What about the types of certification you have?
Yes. So we've got some really great certifications, and 4 main certifications that are focused on different topics. So if I start from sort of the certifications that will make sense from a pure supply chain perspective, the first is the CLTD, which is really focused on logistics, transportation, distribution. It's what you think of when you think of logistics and supply chain, right? It's sort of people outside the industry that kind of have an idea of supply chain. They'll think about that. They'll think of warehouses and transport and trucks and that kind of stuff.
This is for beginner?
It's I wouldn't say it's beginner. It's a little bit more advanced.
More advanced, huh?
In fact, all the certifications are typically at a middle to upper to even executive level, focus in terms of the
It's
market.
only one level, huh?
One exam.
One exam.
It's one exam, yes. And all our certifications are one exam.
Okay.
Wasn't the case in the past. With CPIM, we had up to 5 at one point. It's a one exam now, so that's quite good news for anyone who wants to write their exam and get their certification.
So it's only one exam rather than
correct.
Reading a lot, doing a lot of exam. It's one exam now.
Correct. Look, the content is still quite heavy, but it is one exam. But good content, so there's a reason for that.
Okay.
So then moving on to the CPIM. So CPIM is more focused on planning, on inventory management, a little bit of the inbound supply chain as well. So a bit of sourcing and structure.
And this is one of the gap you just addressed for the skills.
Exactly. So when we actually have a certificate in planning as well, which is a separate offering, but correct, the CPIM would be a good example of something you could use to mitigate the planning gap or skills planning gap. So that's also a really great certification. Then moving up to the next one is CSCP, which is a certified supply chain professional. Now, I kind of see them in the difference, if I could explain it, between CPIM and CLTD and CSCP, is the CSCP, the Certified Supply Chain Professional, is slightly more strategic. So it's more about what would an optimal network design be?
Hmm.
How could I best improve the maturity of the supply chain? How does everything connect together? It's end to end. So that's a really nice certification. And actually, here in the kingdom, that is the most popular certification here. And also, it's fully refundable by Hadif.
Was by Hadaf, yes.
So that's good news.
And it is including logistic, everything, huh?
It's got a component of logistics, supply chain, broader supply chain strategy. Obviously, all the typical concepts you would imagine, but the way that it ties it together is really great. And we've recently just updated that about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So it's quite up to date content, including a lot of digital related concepts as well. And then we have this. Yeah.
There is a one related to transformation. It's very well known also, especially for the executive and leaders.
Absolutely, and that's actually the one that I was going to next, because what we have seen with the CTSC, Certified in Transformation for Supply Chain, is the focus of that is a bit more on the how to identify, find, quantify, and then solve for gaps that we find in the supply chain. So we've now assumed that you know what a supply chain is very well. How do we now take it to the next level? You're a mature organization. You've implemented the best practices for the most part. You think you're doing things well according to what you've learned in your textbooks. But how do you now fix problems? You know, you might have certain KPIs and metrics that continuously are poor. And these are kind of things that just recur again and again. Now, it's not acceptable as a supply chain to, well, let me say this. It's acceptable to have out of stocks for month after month, but it's not acceptable to have it for the same reason, because that means we didn't learn from the issue and didn't fix it. That certification provides us with a how to identify opportunities, gaps, quantify those opportunities and gaps, and then understand how to fix it as well. So it's really a journey. It takes the reader on a journey of how to do all these things, how to put initiatives in place, and then ultimately to measure the success of that engagement initiative that they've implemented in the supply chain.
Very nice with, I believe, the example you just bring. So what was the example of having the current situation, put it in a demo, try to imagine what is the strategy, what you have to do, then expect. So it's look more like transformation from current situation to the future.
Exactly. And companies these days I see more and more often, we definitely know there's the control tower trend, which has
Yes.
been around for many years, but control towers were enabling us to have visibility, essentially, of our supply chain, right? Imagine a control tower in an airport. That's exactly what it does. You can see what's happening and understand what's happening, but we also need a way to fix it and to support the objectives that we now have, instead of just seeing that it's happening and firefighting or reacting to an issue that we might have. So the CTSC is a really good way for organizations that are now implementing continuous improvement organizations, frameworks and structures within the company, to really help them to take it to the next level.
Okay, very nice. How many certificates do you have?
Certificates, we have 6.
6, so 2 more.
So certifications, we have 4. Those
Okay.
those
This is the one
certifications, and
we
then
just accepted.
certificates, which are not proctored exams. They are exams that are built into the content. Those we have 6 different topics.
Okay. طيب, let us return just to the organization. If I get the score, either benchmark or maturity assessment, then I finish. What is next?
Absolutely fantastic point. The next step is for the organization to take action on that. So score mark is really the starting point of how we do root cause analysis. How does it help? It helps because it actually identifies not just the first level. So we're not just looking at the total supply chain management cost. We're looking at within that the cost of warehousing, the cost of transport, the cost of people, the cost of technology, the cost of planning. We're going to identify all those things. And now when we start to compare, how far off are we from the benchmark population? That's where we want to focus on engagements and initiatives to close that out. So if it's in planning, and I'll tell you that for a fact, planning, it often is, right?
Yes.
If it's in planning, we want to then put in place either technologies, processes, maybe upskill people in planning so that we can improve that particular metric or that particular area. That's how it helps us. We analyze resources, resource allocation. Where do we need to spend our resources and take actions for?
Okay, great. Do you have any awards to motivate the people from ASCM?
We're actually working on an award program at the moment, and
Great news.
we have different types of awards, but we have one long-standing awards program at our annual conference, which covers 3 categories. The one category is excellence in supply chain. So that would be, you've achieved a better performance rating from a project that you did. The other one is related to sustainability, or what we term as making a difference. And then the third category is related to talent. So how you engaged with a large-scale talent initiative and improved the performance ultimately, but improved the lives of your employees.
When will be your conference?
Conference is in September in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And yeah, so there's still time to register.
Okay. And this is the 3 categories for the award. This is for organization level, yes?
Correct.
Do you have anything for individual?
We do. We also have an individual level award, and those individuals are recognized for outstanding achievement in similar areas as well, including making a difference, their ability to change, to improve their supply chains, and in
Okay.
and in
Great,
talent
great.
as well.
Great. Do you have any advice for the people who will watch this session?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the
You're
session.
most
So
welcome.
I would say my biggest piece of advice would be to not forget about the fundamentals, because I think with the impacts we've been seeing in the world lately, how they're impacting supply chain, it's been quite tricky to figure out what to do, right? We're like almost abandoning everything we knew before and just going back to being primitive, and let's go back to making fire with a stick. No, we've learned what we have to do. We need to follow the process, adapt the process, but follow those principles that we've learned for many, many years, and really just keep implementing them. So I think we need to also upskill ourselves in a different way. I would encourage anyone watching this or listening to this that you start to look at what else is out there from a skills upliftment perspective, because things are changing very quickly. And you want to be able to be in a position where you can make decisions more than run the operations of a supply
Yes.
chain. And I think there's a big difference in that mindset. So I think that's what I'd leave the people with
Thank you very much
as we
for your
close out.
advice. And I know that your schedule busy here in KSA, from one meeting to podcast to another meeting.
Absolutely. I think it's the
So,
3rd podcast I've done so far this week.
so thank you very much. Just before ending the session, we need just to watch the camera, and you will say the motto of our channel: to inspire the world.
To inspire the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.